This meeting is being recorded.
.30, we'll call the workshop to order, and we're going to save the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation for the formal town council meeting after the workshop. The purpose of the workshop is for the discussion, education, and information for the council regarding the US1 Donald Ross Road and Universe Boulevard issues with respect to complete streets, and also to get the input from town staff. There's nothing formal for us to vote on, but we wanted to have an opportunity for a robust discussion here. So I'll turn it over to staff. Frank? Oh, Andrea?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. At the December meeting, Council had asked that staff go out to each of the 3 locations designated, Universe Boulevard, US1, and Donald Ross Road, and take a look at the conditions, the existing conditions, and offer feedback from our perspective. So we have done just that. It was decided upon that we would not include the traffic engineer at this state, at this time. So this is just staff's input and feedback. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank. He's going to give us a brief rundown of what complete streets are.
Thank you, Andrea. Good afternoon, Council. So what we wanted to do, what we wanted to do here is just give you a quick overview of what complete streets are, their components, and how and show you the areas of interest that were discussed previously. This is not a formal type of workshop, so if there are any questions from council, please just ask. And you know, we have all of senior staff here to answer those questions for you. We were all present at the 3 locations of the areas of interest, so we're all very knowledgeable about the Universe Boulevard, US Highway 1, and Donald Ross Road. So today, we'll talk about what complete streets are, areas of interest, and then at the end, we'll have a discussion between staff and town council. So first, I'd like to start with what is a complete street. So complete streets is an approach to planning and designing streets that prioritize a safe and convenient access to all users. Applying a complete street approach does not result in a network of identical streets. There is no singular design prescription for complete streets. Each one is unique and it responds to its community and context. In front of you, you'll see what the TPA gave us back when they did the multimodal study, of what they would propose US Highway 1 to be. So this is their idea of a complete street here at Juno Beach. As I mentioned before, complete streets have many components. They have been around, the idea of complete streets have been around since the 1990s. Palm Beach County, the TPA adopted such thing as in 2016. But we're really looking at a 30-year-old idea of what complete streets are. On the right side, you'll see that there are many components to it, such as sidewalks, bike lanes, bus lanes, public transportation stops, crosswalks, medians, pedestrian signals, curb extensions, lighting, stormwater treatment, travel lanes, the widths, roundabouts, and many more. So it depends really on who you're asking, what complete streets are, and that specific entity or municipality might tell you this is the idea of a complete street to Juno Beach, to the town of Jupiter, to Palm Beach County. And that's what we saw from the presentation that the TPA gave us a few months back. which if we go back to the screen is what you have in front of you. You know, they wanted bike lanes, reduce lane widths, a median, and crosswalks. You know, a safe way for pedestrian, bicycle users, and vehicle users to travel through US1 and its 42 miles, because their idea of a complete street does involve all of US Highway 1, south to north in all 42 miles. As discussed before, we did look at 3 areas of interest, per the direction of council. That is Universe Boulevard, Donald Ross Road, and US Highway 1. And Andrea is going to explain a little bit about those.
So we started out with the town-owned roadway, which is Universe Boulevard. The basic observations out there are that it's a 100-foot right-of-way of road. There's a 5-foot sidewalk on both the north and the south sides of the roadway. And it's separated, the sidewalk is separated from the roadway with a sodded swale. There's a healthy median that separates the directional traffic. There are no bike lanes on Universe Drive, Universe Boulevard. We did witness a number of pedestrians and bicyclists when we were out on site, and they used both the sidewalk and the roadway to traverse east to west. Frank is going to go over some of the technical aspects of Universe and what would be affected if we went further with a complete street slope.
Yeah, so right before we do that, we have a couple of 10-second video clips of just showing you the current conditions of Universe, Donald Ross Road, and US Highway 1. So Caitlin, if you want to get the video up for me, please. That should be called the producer. Yes, the producer. This is us on Universe Boulevard and Uno Lago Drive looking west. And this is about 4:10 p.m. In the afternoon.
You have to turn the head for that part.
No,
There's an extra screen for it here.
yeah, it's very small, so I apologize, but it is in front of you and behind you as well. And this is same thing, Universe and Uno Lago, but we're looking east. And as Andrew mentioned, these are some of the existing conditions and options and observations that the staff witnessed while we did our visit. So it is a town-owned road. We do have 2 travel lanes in each direction, east and west. The speed limit is 30 miles per hour. We are looking at a 100-foot right-of-way throughout all of the Universe. We have 5-foot sidewalks on both ends, a very healthy median. There is no bike lane. And when we were there, we did notice that the bicyclists mainly use the sidewalk to travel on the Universe. They do not travel, or at least we did not witness them traveling on the road itself.
There was, yeah.
There was? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. I was there multiple times to take the video and the pictures. So the majority was on. So some of the options and observations that we saw is that the right-of-way is wide enough to expand the sidewalk. There is an option for a multimodal sidewalk, which is a safer approach to cyclists. So that means that you combine, you create a sidewalk that's possibly 8-10 feet wide, where a pedestrian and a bicyclist can share that sidewalk. And of course, there would be something, to say this side is for the cyclist, this side is for the pedestrian. But there are ways of doing that. Expanding the sidewalk may have a negative impact on the drainage. We currently have a very good drainage system on the west side. If that we saw in the images, we have catch basins there. And also expanding the sidewalk may require relocation of utilities, street lights, and catch basins that are currently within that sodded or landscape buffer. Prior to the TPA study, there were no records of comments or requests about the roadway or sidewalk by residents of Dino Beach. And of course, we always like to add that any proposed improvements would need to be made after the drainage project has been completed, because that is a project that we're looking at doing in the very near future. Or doing, correct.
So the next roadway that we went out to take a look at was the main thoroughfare through Juno Beach, and that's US Highway 1. This roadway is owned by the state of Florida. It has 2 travel lanes on each side, north and south, and there's 120 feet of right-of-way on this roadway. There is a 4-foot bike lane adjacent to the vehicle travel lane, and there's a 5-foot sidewalk as well, and that's on each side of the roadway, both east and west. The roadway does have multiple deceleration lanes on both sides, but it also has a number of streets and intersections that do not have the deceleration lanes for access to the businesses. There is an intersection or multiple intersections with traffic lights and signalized crosswalks. If you look at each section, depending on how large of a section you look at on US1, each one can be unique. So it's not uniform across the board. Each area would need to be looked at and studied for any changes, but I'll let Frank discuss the observations.
And again, this is just a quick clip of the existing conditions. So this right here is on US1 and Seminole Boulevard, looking north and right around 420. And this is right across the Marine Life Center, right before 5 p.m. So as Andrea mentioned, we do have 120-foot right-of-way for US Highway 1. It is state of Florida owned road. There are 2 travel lanes in each direction. The speed limit is 45 miles per hour. There is a healthy median. There is a mixture of egress and egress with or without the deceleration lanes. We do not have any mid-block crosswalks, which was something that was mentioned during our TPA floor. Oh no, I'm sorry. The site visit that we did with the TPA. Yes, right. And of course, as mentioned, intersections with traffic lights they do have signalized crosswalks, but those are the only locations where they are. The options and observations, there are drainage concerns by the Shell gas station, Dino Beach condominium, which is the mobile home park, the mobile gas station just north of Gino Isles, and by Park Street. Mid-block crosswalks may be helpful at Rural Drive, which is right in front of the Fairmark Plaza, and the Laurelhead Marine Life Center, but those would require FDOT approval and engineered plans to show the need for it. New crosswalks may require a traffic signal if we do decide to do those, especially if we're talking about US Highway 1, a highway that it's 45 miles per hour, but technically people drive faster than that. There are sections of US Highway 1 that vary and require different considerations. If you look at the map right before that, as Andrea mentioned, it's only 2-point-something miles of US1 that we have here in Dino Beach. But each location, right in front of the Seminole Golf Club, right where the ESL area is north of the Beach House Recovery Center, and by the Marine Life Center, those are 3 sections within less than a mile apart that are very different. And again, that's just a 2 mile section, all within Juno Beach. Lastly, due to the speed limit and volume of traffic, riding a bicycle may be dangerous. And we did, correct me here, we did witness people on the sidewalk and on the road.
Yes.
All right.
So the last roadway that we went to visit was Donald Ross Road. Again, this is a pretty busy roadway, a lot of traffic out there. This roadway is owned by Palm Beach County. There's 2 travel lanes in each direction, east and west, and we have 80 feet of right-of-way. There is a 4-foot bike lane adjacent to the travel lane, and there's a 6-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street. The sidewalk does have a raised curb and gutter, and there is existing drainage structure out there. And in some locations, there is a sodded swale. There's a healthy median that separates the directional traffic. There are oak trees on both sides of the street. They do grow a little bit bigger on the south side because there's no conflict with the power lines, which happen to be on the north side. So the oak trees are trimmed up because of FPL not coming in contact with the power lines. I think that's it.
Another quick video. And this is right in front of the Plaza La Mer entrance where the Dunkin' Donuts is. We're looking west. And this is the same location, but now we're looking east. So similar to US Highway 1, there are 2 different segments on Donald Ross Road. And that's really the separation where US Highway 1 is. So east, west of US Highway 1 is different than when we talk about east. We have the curbs on the west side, we have the sidewalk, we have the bicycle lanes there, and of course there is more commercial activity there. But when we go to the east side, there is no curbs, there is no bicycle lane, and width of there's 2 lanes going east and west. As well on the west side, there's 4 lanes. Here, I just wanted to point out there is, I believe, there is a slower speed limit. Yes. No, I believe it drops from 45 to 35. Correct. Just in that little section, which is about 700 and something feet. One thing that I wanted to point out is that when I was doing my site visit, was that we had a family riding through Donald Ross going east. They were riding on the sidewalk. They go into the crosswalk, and then once they get to that intersection of Donald Ross Road and US Highway 1 going east, there is no sidewalk for them to ride on. So they're, they have to ride on the sidewalk just for safety. And there is no, we all driven through Donald Ross Road. If a vehicle is there, there is no way that you can have that type of bike with with your kid in the back sharing the road. So that is something that we did want to point out for the east portion of Donald Ross Road. Andrea covered pretty much all the existing conditions. So some of the options and observations that we saw is that a bike lane is not identified as such. We have it, it's just not striped, or there's no logos or signs on the bike lane, the existing bike lane on the west of US Highway 1. We did witness cyclists using both the sidewalk and the road. The sidewalk system does not tie into the shopping center. So this was something that was brought up by the TPA also in our previous meeting, is that we do have sidewalks in front of the shopping centers, but there is no connection from the sidewalk into the shopping center, which means that if somebody is on the sidewalk and they want to go into the shopping center, they have to go into the driveway to get in there, which Plaza Lemer gets busy. You know, we have other plazas, Pino Square, that we're pretty much making the pedestrians go on into a driveway, which is something that, you know, the TPA reminded us that is not ideal. So we wanted to mention that because at that time, we only saw the one in Pino Square, but we did witness that in other plazas as well. There is an existing curb and gutters in place for drainage purposes that work very well on Donald Ross Road. Palm Beach County Engineering did stripe the do not block intersection right by the Sea Oaks Drive and Donald Ross Road. As mentioned before, there is no bike lane east of US Highway 1, and sidewalks east of US Highway 1, especially the ones on the south side of Donald Ross Road, may not meet ADA standards. And that also came out of the conversation that we had with the TPA.
I want to make one other comment if I can before council starts in with their discussion. As you can see from Frank's pictures and our discussions, each roadway is very unique in and of itself. US1 cannot be compared to Universe or Donald Ross, and even sections of US1, because of the different circumstances, are unique in and of themselves. So in order to best have a plan on moving forward and what the council wants to see, we would really recommend that a professional traffic engineer be involved in not only making decisions how to move forward, but also giving us guidance on what would be appropriate. Because Frank had mentioned when we were out there some of the items that we needed to identify, and Tony had said this too, were the driveways, such as going east on Donald Ross, east of US1, there's commercial and residential driveways. So any kind of an expansion of that section of the roadway would really need to be studied, the pros and cons of what that's going to do and to the area and how it's going to look. And I think that that is something that is a really important aspect of moving forward with this, is to have the professionals' input, because that's what they do.
Okay, is that anything else from staff?
Not at this time.
Okay, council discussion. Dee Dee, do you want to start us off?
Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so thank you, Andrea and Frank, for putting that together. That's a really great overview. We've never, in my history of attending council meetings, seen our roads from that perspective. So thank you for all your work on that. It's interesting, and it's a big scope. So I guess we need to divide and conquer. I went back to an email I received from Melissa Frank at the TPA when I had asked her, you know, how do we move forward? And this was when we were looking toward getting the grant. And I'm going to just read what she wrote when I asked what the next step was. And she said, the next step is for town staff to schedule a one-on-one meeting with TPA and FDOT staff or county staff. The purpose of the one-on-one meeting is for town to present their project ideas and get FDOT or county input on which projects are the most feasible and make sense to move forward. And at that time, then the TPA would direct and help staff, you know, further focus on each of those projects. But she recommended we do these one-on-one meetings, and rather than spend money on involving an engineer right away, I would say that as council, it would be helpful if we identify, either prioritize which roads we'd like to work on or which segments of which roads, and then have our staff meet with FDOT and the county regarding those areas or those improvements before we go into any engineering. Because we do have the US1 Donald Ross intersection. It seems that the county is going to do some lane work there. So we really need to talk to both of those agencies. So I would be interested with you all, maybe ranking the projects, certainly tying in the sidewalks for pedestrians to enter CVS or enter any of the plazas. That seems like, whether it's a complete street thing or not, that seems like it would really help improve safety all around. So maybe we either identify certain things we'd like to see happen, and then really talk to the county and state. Also, I guess Universe Boulevard, since we own it, we would have the most latitude to do something and tie it in with the upcoming drainage project, and that could work very well. So I'm open to that. That's it for now.
Elaine?
I was just going to suggest that we separate the streets. We do Universe and perhaps Donald Ross, and then go into US1 so that we're not combining all of them. But whichever way council would like to do it is fine.
I have no preference. I think Dee Dee tried to cover it by suggesting that maybe we, at the further discussion, we start to prioritize. And so I think that's sufficient, but yeah, I mean, go ahead and make your comments. And if we need to delve into a more specific discussion of one or the other, we can do that as well.
I broke it down by street.
Is that better?
So I do believe our focus should be on Universe and Ellis and Wilson. I was sad not to see it on here. I guess I wasn't loud enough when I said to include that in there. I know, Joe, you did take a look for us, and it is half park and half county. So
Yeah, there's some jurisdictional boundary issues, but I wouldn't be concerned about that because the county will listen to improvement.
okay. So for Universe, I agree with your statements about a multimodal path. I love the expanding of the sidewalk and including a bike lane on there. And as far as the moving of the electrical and all of that, the poles, can we make it not a straight line and maybe leave a little bit? Would that help the situation at all? That's just a thought. And obviously, we wouldn't do anything before we do it in conjunction with our drainage project. And then the Donald Ross east of US1. Yeah, east of US1. That needs to be remedied as well. It is not safe. You cannot ride a bike, as the pictures indicated, on the road. And you do have people, families especially, on the sidewalk. I was looking at, again, my ideas to put the sidewalk on the north side. This way residents aren't affected. I know we have the condominium there, but I don't know how big our right-of-way is, and if that's even possible to put a multimodal sidewalk on the north side of the street. Okay, Wilson, we can look at that later, I guess. And then US1, as I stated at the December 21st meeting, it's a lot to undertake, and I don't know that Juno Beach needs to lead the pack on this. Not that we can't, I just don't see it as something that our town is in need of when we have Ocean Drive that residents and guests can go through and be safer on. And obviously Ocean Drive, I'd love to see our sidewalks finished. That can start from the county, well, from Kathy's Beach connection, that Plaza, Sierra Plaza, to the fire station that connects to Ocean 1. And then on the west side of Ocean, there's just a few spots that don't have a sidewalk, and I'd love to see that finished as well. And then have our bike lane as opposed to on US1. So those are my concerns.
Peggy, go ahead.
Sure. I want to thank staff. You guys did an excellent job on this. And I really appreciate the videos. I appreciate the time that you put in and, you know, your remarks on this. Joe, later on, I will let you explain because I don't, Dee Dee and Elaine were not on council about the sidewalks. And so maybe you can go into detail about that because I think council has looked at that before. And there's a problem with the swales and maybe we can just, you know, do a little catch up on that.
So you're talking about the sidewalk on the west
We
side.
could, we can do that later if you want, because that's kind of an addition to all of this. But that's okay. I just don't want to forget so that we can bring them up to date on that. I'm going to start with Universe Boulevard. I think that I'm not sure currently that any of the stakeholders are interested right now in necessarily changing it. I don't think it's in the best interest of the town or the stakeholders when we have a drainage problem already out there. And also we are looking at the sewage, redoing the sewer lines and upgrading the drainage. So I think that should happen probably at the same time. So I agree with that, but that might be able to happen simultaneously. And then I think we should involve them, the Waterford, Ocean Trace, just to see what they want. Maybe do a little workshop. You know, it would be nice to actually expand the sidewalk and have possibly a larger sidewalk there. But I think it's a good idea to engage them and see what their needs are and what they're looking for. And I think, Frank, you said that we have plenty of room there. So, you know, maybe if we do a little workshop with them and let them see what's available and what their interests are also. And then at least they can bring that back to council and we would have an idea of in the future of what they'd like to do. Donald Russ Road. We know that the county has had a letter from us and the letter that we sent in explained that we don't really want to, you know, take that median and take any of the median to do an expansion. Now, we're not in charge of that. We are at their mercy in a way. You know, we can write the letter and explain that to them. And hopefully we will not take any of the median or they won't take any of the median, but we can't guarantee that. So there's not, I don't know, Joe, in your opinion, if there's a lot we can do on Donald Ross going up to US1 at this stage, because it is part of what the county has in their like 2-year, 3-year and 4-year plan, I think, correct? And I was looking at the sheet to see if I could see exactly those sections, because at one time we did have the sections and when those improvements were going to happen. Frank, do you remember when those were to come about?
I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
Yeah, somewhere 2025, 2026, and they're in the design, they just starting the design of those two improvements of those two roads, which is Ellison Wilson making, so everybody knows, making a new turn lane going west on Ellison Wilson, another turn lane, and also having a continuous on US1, a continuous going south on US1, a continuous right-hand turn onto Donald Ross Road. So those are the two roads. And they are looking at not affecting our mediums majorly or in a material way. So they did listen to our letter. We did have a very productive meeting with them, and they are not going to remove or expand to 6 lanes, they said at this point. So that was good news.
So I think that at this stage from Donald Ross from US1 West, really the majority of what we can do is maybe striping or something that would, you know, give a better idea of where our bicycle lanes are if needed. I'm not sure that that's even needed. So I'm not sure engaging in a Donald Ross from US1 on is necessarily the thing to do now when the county is going to be engineering it anyway. And Joe, I'm happy to have your opinion on that one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, if you see anything blaring as a council that needs to be done, one of our thing was the striping. That's an easy fix to put the striping on the bicyclists. We think that was blaring, but if you see any, and obviously the egress to the shopping centers by sidewalk, so they don't actually walk in the travel lanes. If you see anything blaring like that, let us know and we can communicate that with the county and maybe they can incorporate it with those 2 small projects they're doing with the lane expansions.
But in your opinion, doing anything major, there's no reason to do that, as probably the same thing holds true for Universe.
We haven't, we did go over the complaints before we started this on Universe and US1 and on Donald Ross. There was, the only complaints we had on Donald Ross was do not block the box on COs. And that was a major complaint. It still is. It's better. I was just there today for Seacoast. People are somewhat abiding to it, right, Chief?
Yeah.
That's very
So
positive.
it is, in my opinion, it's better. I mean, obviously, we should talk to COs residents, they live it. But I think it's a little better, but that's the only complaints we've gotten, correct?
Well, I will say that there have been concerns expressed about the US1 Donald Ross intersection, which
Yes.
is much different than
Yes.
the roadways. So the intersection, we're aware of that there's concern about people navigating in the crosswalks with enough time. But no, we don't have any complaints or comments about the roadway or the sidewalk or the bike lanes.
On the
so that
west
we're
side.
clear.
The east side, we've had some things about no bike lanes and just how do you navigate there. But on the west side, nothing. Andrea's right. It's the safe havens. And I've told you all that. I would love to see, you know, in the northwest corner, if it ever gets developed, to have the developer look into putting in safe havens to actually cross the roads more safely. So that's our observations. US1, before this started, we've had no comments. It is legal, we believe, right, Chief?
Yes.
We did research this again. It is legal to ride your bike on sidewalks, and that's mainly what I do. I ride my bike with my family. We go to destinations like ice cream shops. So I'm a different kind of user than, you know, traveling to go to a job or to anywhere else. But when we go, we use a lot of our sidewalks, and that's what we saw. We observed people on US1 using their bicycles on the sidewalk.
And Florida's a rarity that you can use a bicycle on the sidewalk. So we just discovered this a couple of days ago, and I was kind of shocked. I've never heard of a place where you're allowed to ride bikes on a sidewalk,
You can pick that up.
but you can legally,
Electric
Is it-
bikes or just regular bicycles?
Anybody.
any bike.
Anybody.
Yeah, and I find that surprising because in my mind, that would be a little dangerous if it was shared with pedestrians. But you don't have a lot of pedestrians on US1 on the sidewalks. So
And Len, you might want to check that too, just to make sure we're correct, because
Yeah, I didn't know about the electric bikes, but
we use Mr. Google.
Yeah,
I don't know about electric bike because it's not human power. It might make it.
Yeah.
right, I think that's different.
yeah, self-propelled is different, yeah.
I found that interesting, and I told the chief, I said, you know, I always thought I was going to be in trouble for my kids riding on the sidewalk, but I didn't want to put them on the roadway because I felt that was
Yeah.
very dangerous when they were 6 and 7 years old. So we were always on the sidewalk, and I thought that was the law too.
In my
that you
mind,
couldn't-
you know, if a bike's on the roadway, it's a little more dangerous for them. The bike's on the sidewalks, a little more dangerous for pedestrians
Right.
because you don't want to get hit. And it's
Right.
happened here where people have gotten hit by bicycles. Whether sometimes it's the pedestrian in the roadway, which that is illegal. They're not allowed to be in the bicycle lane. But the opposite is not true.
Joggers are not supposed to be jogging or walking in the bike
Right.
lanes.
Where a sidewalk is provided.
And then I want to talk about from east of US1. I know that a lot of residents that I've spoken to don't want to change that road. They're so happy with that 2-lane road coming into Ocean Drive. I know we have a problem there, and I think this is a prime example of where we can engage an engineer to take a look at how to maybe help the situation with the bicyclists, increasing the sidewalk or something like that, something that's very minimal that can help our residents connect from Ocean Drive onto US1. So that would be a particular area that I'm not advocating for it necessarily, but I would think it would be interesting to engage an engineer to see what they could do from that perspective. Then I'm going to go on to US1 because that's actually the biggie for me. And 3 years ago when we started this, I think we called it complete streets, or not complete streets. We called it repurposing, rebranding. And so that's the one that I've had an interest in. And again, I want to talk about it, but it doesn't mean that I'm jumping in and saying this, we should do this, because if we don't have the facts and we don't have all the information, we really can't make a decision. But I wanted to go through a little bit. I wanted to talk to the 5 of us to see what we think. All right. And I want to talk to staff about it too. And I'm going to go through some of the positives and the negatives of perhaps doing this project or looking into the project further or getting an engineer on board for this. One of the, some of the things after Joe, you and I had spoken to Alyssa and Connor, as I came out of that meeting with, obviously they're with the TPA, but an understanding more that this is a project that we really have control of. We can designate what we want to do. We don't have to take deceleration lanes out. We don't have to do all the streets. We can do a portion of the streets. We can do the areas that we feel are a safety issue. So the number one positive for me is the safety aspect of it. And not only because of US1 and Donald Ross, but I believe that US1, we have 120 feet of right of way there. And we have a lot of space to be able to do this. We have the money coming from the DOT to be able to do it. And the cost to this project is going to be the engineer and coming up with maybe some typicals and maybe some other expenses. But it seems to me like such a minimal expense if we have up to $5 million that we can use on this project. So for me, safety is number one. For pedestrians, for bicyclists, it's very dangerous to ride on the side of the road. I don't know if anyone rides their bicycle even on any other street in any other city. And when you're on the side of the road and you've got traffic, it's scary. And the amount of accidents that have happened, and they're serious accidents when they happen. It's not something that you're going to, just fall over. You're going to possibly be hurt seriously. So that was important. That's important to me. You have bikers that come up from the south, usually from the south. They're taking these 40, 50, 60-mile trips, and they're going fast. Now, it's Ocean Drive is an area that they could go on, and that's what they usually do, is they'll cut off into Ocean Drive. But that also puts our residents at risk, I think. It puts the people that are on the bicycle lanes that might jump off of the sidewalk because they're, kids coming on a bicycle or whatever, but they're going fast. Mainly they're going very quickly. And I would rather have those individuals on US1 separated with the buffer that they can do with the complete streets than to see them on Ocean Drive. I've also spoken to some professional bicyclists. They said anything that we can do like this is positive for our town. So I kind of reiterated my feeling on that. The other important safety aspect of that is the slowing down of traffic. We can slow down traffic. That's going to be such a positive, especially on US1 and Donald Ross. Frank, you said something about the issues. We have some issues with flooding, obviously, and some of US1. By doing this, is there a potential to eliminate that flooding?
That's the reason we would need an engineer to look at those, because it depends on the location. Some locations may have the right of way where we can fix those problems, and some of those may not. Especially around the environmental sensitive area, the sidewalks are very close to the road as it is. So we may have 24 inches to play with. In some areas, we have 10 feet. So it depends on the segment of US1 that we're looking at.
Right. So engaging the engineer again is very important to do. It enhances and beautifies US1 with this kind of improvement. The landscaping, it adds landscaping, which is very nice, the beautification of landscaping. I think it can bring more economic benefit to the businesses that are located there, because if you have the ability to bike and then you can get off and go into one of the businesses easier than, being on Ocean Drive, and maybe you didn't see the Thirsty Turtle or you didn't see one of the other restaurants that are out here, it might bring some economic benefit. Also, I had another one here. So I talked about the bikers. Let's go a little bit into the negatives because I knew there was a negative that I heard out of this, and that was the deceleration lane. So my one concern was eliminating deceleration lanes because I wouldn't want to do anything that would impact our citizens, impact any of the traffic concerns that they could have. So I think that's a very, very important consideration. But that's why we need to hire an engineer. We could have him, instead of doing 5 typicals, we could maybe do 3 typicals, which would cut down the cost of his proposal. We could actually have them just look at how many deceleration lanes would actually have to be taken away and do something very simple at the beginning so that the cost is just, consulting and not going into drawing up typicals. Frank, I heard you say something to me earlier, and I don't know if I should mention this because I know you're not an engineer, but if we wanted to do some typicals, you were capable of doing that, but not from the standpoint that we would be submitting them, but just from the standpoint that we could look at them and, just.
For purely visual aid, yes.
Right.
Yes, that's doable.
The other negative that I heard early on was the curbing. And I know that was an issue at the beginning because we thought we had to do a high curbing between the traffic lanes and the bike lanes, but we found out we didn't have to do that. And that we could just do markings. We can do striping in that area too. So I think that's kind of an eliminated negative that we had. But I think all in all, they're willing to work with us. I think if we show them what we want, not doing what they want us to do and doing the whole street like that, taking out deceleration lanes, but doing what we'd like to see done to US1, I think that's possible, but we don't know unless we engage the civil or the engineer to take a look at that. I want to go back to everyone and talk to them because this is our only opportunity. I hear things that come up and I think, maybe somebody would like this, but they're against it because of this reason. I don't know, Jim, if I'm going to come to you because I know you're against it. You were, at least. No, I will. I'll give you the opportunity. I'm kidding. But Dee Dee, if you want to start, I want you to tell me, are there negatives that you really see besides the ones I brought out on the deceleration lanes? And
Before we go into that, let's hear Jim and Jason.
Yeah, Peggy, you have other comments that you want to?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You can circle back to me after you both speak.
Yeah, definitely discussion, but I want to hear from Jim and Jason's point of view as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure Peggy's finished with her initial comments before we move on.
Well, that's okay, because I can come back. I want to talk a little bit about the engineering costs and what we were presented, and we can talk about that after you're
Well,
finished.
let's go ahead because maybe Jim will have
Okay, pick up
comments on that.
something. Okay, so you've been hearing that I think it's a good idea to engage an engineer. And I think we can do the scope of what we'd like to see the engineer do. I think that we originally he came out with what, $25,000. And I think if I looked at taking that typical back, we could do it for maybe 15 to 18,000 if I looked at his cost per typical. But I think when you consider the benefit to the town and up to $5 million that the town could receive, is spending, the town spends a lot of money, is spending some money on engineering to see what we want to do with these roads. Is that a great cost for our town? And I think it's something that might be beneficial on any of these roads. Donald Ross east of US1, I think that's important. I did have a lot of questions for Brian anyway, so I would like to bring him back maybe at another meeting to give him an idea of what we're looking for in the scope, if we can come up with that this evening or this afternoon. And I think besides talking to council in general about their feelings, that's about it. Jason.
Okay.
So Jim, if you want to.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'll start with Universe Boulevard. I'm on there a lot of times during the week, and I haven't seen an issue yet where there's a problem with pedestrians and bicyclists. And what I think we should do before we jump in anything, I agree with having a workshop with the Waterford, Ocean Trace, Oak Harbor, Bay Colony, FP&L. They're all right there on Universe. And I think they should be included before we decide anything, because they'll see things from a different perspective that we don't even see. I mean, I don't see where there's a problem there at all. And I'm there morning, noon, afternoon, late afternoon when FP&L is coming and going to work. I use Universe a lot, but I think we need a workshop first. I also agree if we're going to do anything, it's during or after the drainage project. Okay. Now talking about US1, and I'm not talking about the intersection. I'm talking about just US Highway 1. I am not a proponent of trying to encourage bikers to ride their bikes on US1 because of the volume of traffic, because of the speed. I think you're asking for trouble. And right now, I do not see a lot of bikers on US1. And I think that would be a waste of taxpayer dollars to put a lot of money for bikers on US Highway 1. We have the sidewalks now, we have the bike lanes, and basically they're really not used. And, also, I haven't heard, state of Florida owns, it's US1 is their road. It's a major highway. We haven't talked about bringing them on board. I would think we need to talk to them if we're allowed to do anything on US Highway 1. And we haven't even talked about FDOT. They need to be involved with drainage. Again, excuse me, deceleration lanes. I know I'm bouncing all over the place. I am not in favor at all of eliminating deceleration lanes because you're going to have a lot of rear end accidents. And I'm thinking of US1 right there by CVS. Everybody uses that deceleration lane to go into CVS. And you eliminate that, you're just going to have rear end accidents. People are going to get hurt. So that's my thing on US1. On Donald Ross Road, the same thing. We have the sidewalks, we have the bike lanes, and they're used, but they're not used that much. People use the Donald Ross Road bike lanes when they want to get to the beach. They're coming over the bridge, and that's basically the bikers that you see on Donald Ross Road. Again, I don't see a need to expand the bike lanes or the sidewalks. And I think it's just a waste of taxpayer dollars. So, those are and on US1, I think if we can, to put a bike lane east from Donald Ross Road, east to Ocean Drive, if it's possible, if the right of way's there, I think a bike lane is warranted, and even the sidewalks, if it's a doable thing on the north side. Those are my comments.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'll add a couple of comments. I just a momentary perspective. So this came up, if I recall, we had a special meeting in December with an eye towards there were going to be cutoffs for a grant. We in an effort to move it along, we approached the traffic engineer who came back with a proposal that was in, I think Peggy mentioned the $25,000 range. That's consistent with my recollection. And after taking a look at that, that's when the council sort of hit the pause button and wanted to get some additional input and a better understanding of what it is we were getting. If from a cost benefit standpoint, we see the $25,000 cost, what are we getting for that money? What are we doing and why are we rushing in that direction? So we've now come back. We're now in January. This workshop is informative, at least from my perspective, because I have no expertise with respect to traffic related issues. And I thought that the suggestion we received from the staff, which was why don't we let the staff take a look at it first and come back to us and break off some of these issues and be a little more specific. This has been very helpful, and at least we can focus, whether it's on the issues with Universe Boulevard, US1 or Donald Ross, and also the difference between, to the extent it's going to be a town-owned road versus a roadway that's owned by the state or by the county, or even we may have influence and we may have a lot of input, and that may go in our favor. However, at the same time, those are different considerations that we need to undertake. I think what I've heard from the staff and also at least several of the council members, I think the tendency, and I know, Jim, you're decidedly in a different camp here on this, but with respect to the traffic engineer, I do think that while I'm not necessarily on board with the $25,000 cost, and I tend to agree with Peggy that we might have an opportunity here to either narrow the scope or reduce it and reduce that cost. I think what we're also hearing from the staff is we've gone out to take a look at this. We've got a basic understanding of some of the considerations, but we want that expertise. We want that input from somebody that very much specializes in this. And while I think some of the consideration last month was this individual hasn't done a quote unquote complete streets project in Palm Beach County, I think we also found out afterwards that there really are, we're not going to find too many local traffic engineers that have the local knowledge and expertise and that have completed those projects, because they just aren't getting done on any regular basis or at all for that matter. So we don't necessarily need to spearhead this and try and reinvent things, but I do think we've got an opportunity to make the town more conducive, whether it's for residents, for visitors. And I do agree that from a safety and aesthetic and a business standpoint, we have an opportunity to improve things. But again, I want to be more considerate of not just the cost of the engineer. I think that's a first step. And I think if we reduce the scope, we've got a couple of different considerations for three distinct different areas. And even from there, you've got different subsets. The Universe Boulevard issue seems like the easiest one, and especially knowing that there's drainage concerns and issues that are going to take place in some construction. It does seem like an opportune time that if we're going to add a wider sidewalk and expand it for a bike lane over on the other side, I also like the idea of involving the Waterford and FPL and the other local stakeholders. Folks are out there all the time from the Waterford walking their dogs or just taking a walk. You've got people with bicycles out there. If there are safety concerns or other issues, I don't necessarily see them. I see that it's a fairly wide sidewalk. I've walked it. It's very pleasant. It's very nice. It seems other than the areas that we've had drainage issues and Tony and others have needed to get in there, it appears to be reasonably safe, and it looks good. It seems to do the job, but if we want to add some room for bicycles, it seems like an opportune time to do it. Let me go to the Donald Ross on the east side. I tend to agree. It really, the character of what I think people feel and see when they cross that intersection, it gives that small town feel. Let's just make sure with the traffic engineer's help, we're not doing anything that disrupts that, but at the same time, for the folks that are walking or riding bicycles or coming around, that we do what we can, both from an aesthetic and a safety standpoint, and also to the extent you've got businesses there and people that live nearby want to take a walk or ride their bike and utilize those businesses and establishments. Let's do what we can to make it more conducive and get the traffic engineer, let the staff work with the traffic engineer's input to see what our options are as a council. To the west side, other than striping and some other issues, I don't know that we need, I don't see any big changes. US1, that I think Frank's did a very good job of demonstrating with the videos and with the illustrations why it's really three different areas and three different distinct sets of considerations that probably all we would want some input from a traffic engineer for different reasons. There were a couple of moments in that video where I thought Frank was taking his life in his hands, and I see exactly the point that our vice mayor is trying to make. And I don't know that we want to encourage or feed more pedestrian or bicycle traffic that's going to put anybody at risk. But again, I think that's something that the staff can work with a traffic engineer and say, look, these are considerations that we don't necessarily want to encourage it, but if people are going to be there, what can we do to enhance the safety? And then, of course, if people are going to be there anyway, let's do what we can. But I don't know that we need to be just because there may be a grant available or something else. I mean, I look at things like those armadillos and some of these other things, and I think that's just way over the top and more that I would really be willing to consider. But I do think at a reduced scope level, we can get some feedback and let the staff work with the traffic engineer. We've got a staff that's always been very cost conscious, budget conscious. And if we work with a traffic engineer that comes back and gives us a proposal that's in line with maybe a more limited scope for these three pieces, but maybe we can sort of consolidate what we're all saying or the majority of us are saying and get a reduced scope of work and a reduced cost and still have the opportunity for the benefits to be available. Those are my initial comments. Dee Dee, did you have follow-up?
Yes, thank you. So while we're sitting here, I wrote a list. I'm all about writing lists, and it helps me organize my thinking and my process. So the first thing on my list I wrote is to create a list of priorities for each road and decide whether or not we want to modify the whole road segments or just specific aspects of it. So number one is list of priorities. Number two, I have workshop for Universe Boulevard. I think that road really is easier for us to work on. I say easy in quotes, but an easy place to start because we have the most control over it. I would like to see a workshop there, either with staff, I guess, soliciting residents' input from the Waterford and Ocean Trace. Number three, if Frank has the time and the bandwidth to do this, I would like to see what Frank's mock-ups would be because, he has personal experience with that road, all of our roads, so we can identify these list of priorities and pick a couple. I'm not saying he has to do 10 renderings, but maybe, one or two for each road, whatever he's comfortable with, and give us some ideas. Number four, I'm going to put this before meeting with an engineer. I really feel that it would be worth our while once we have resident input and we have some of our priorities down, that we meet with that staff. I say we, that our staff meets with FDOT and the county. We may have a wish list of things we want to do, but I think we really need to understand their perspectives from, their future projects, their drainage concerns, their other concerns before we engage an engineer, because we can have an engineer give us plans, not plans, but, a design or a assessment from their point of view. But even if our engineer doesn't know where the county or the FDOT stands, then, we could be back at square one and now we've spent money on an engineer for things that maybe FDOT says hands down, we're sorry, we're just not doing this. If we meet with the FDOT and the county ahead of time, we also might find that maybe they can help us meet some of these things on our wish list and we don't have to work so hard to get it. They may see the advantages of the safety issues that we're concerned with, and they may help, ameliorate those things with us, or even, I don't know if they give us towns funding. I don't know how that component works, but we may find that by working closely with the FDOT and the county that we have some maybe freebies or extra things thrown in that they're willing to do to help solve some problems. So that would be my number four, is to meet with the agencies. After that, I would say number five would be to then engage an engineer and maybe take some of those plans a step further. If, if it all goes in that direction. I had brought this up at our last workshop about engineering experience. There are these transportation planning engineers. I don't believe Simmons and White has transportation planning experience. When I look on their website, I know we have a contract with them and they've been successful with negotiations with the county, but I would really like to see us get bids from local engineers that have experience, even if we're not going to do a quote complete street project per se. They have that in their portfolio. For instance, Kimley Horn, I was just looking online, they helped design the Fit Team ballpark. I forget if it was Kittleson or Kimley Horn. There's an Okeechobee Boulevard project, Clematis Street, with a change to make it more pedestrian friendly. So there are these two West Palm Beach companies that have some experience making areas more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And it's not a slight to Simmons and White. I just want to make sure that we really get the bang for our buck and that we're not, spending money. We always want the best candidate for a job, and these undertakings are going to be huge. And I would like to work with an engineer that has worked with the county and FDOT on similar projects at the very least, because that could save us time and money in the long run if they're familiar with how to navigate these processes and they have insights from working with other clients that they can share with us. As far as bicyclists on US1, to Jim's point, I think that if we built it and we made it safe and attractive, I think you would see a lot of use. I think people aren't bicycling on US1 because it's not safe as it stands. And I think if we created a split lane situation or something that was more protective of cyclists, I would think that there would be enough people to use it. East of US1 for Donald Ross Road, I like the idea of exploring sidewalk and bike lane improvements there. That road becomes very busy when people go to the beach, and also when we have on our next agenda a couple of festivals coming up, Turtle Fest and Art Fests and things like that. And there's just sometimes hundreds of people then walking there. And I think any improvements we can do pedestrian wise, even to facilitate our arts and crafts events there, would be helpful. So that's what I've got. Thank you.
Elaine, follow up.
Yeah, so this workshop, in my opinion, has done its job. It had staff go out and give us information that we did not have. I know I've learned quite a few things and appreciate the video and the time spent. And it got us talking so we can hear what the five of us, want to see moving forward. Most of us, well, there's a few things that we are all on the same page about. And I do agree that, hiring an engineer is important if we are going to continue in this adventure. I really would love to fix the sidewalks and the bike path on Donald Ross east of US1. I think that's important. It's a safety issue for our residents and visitors alike. So knowing that bicycles are now allowed on sidewalks on US1, I think it's a moot point, in my opinion. Again, I'm not an opposed to enhancing and learning more and getting educated about US1 and making it better, but I'm not in favor of, at this point, doing anything huge to US1. Donald Ross west of US1, agree with what you had suggested as far as signage goes. That's the quickest fix and could benefit, and with share the road signs as well. I'm not in favor of mid-block crosswalks at Floral. I think that's, extremely dangerous unless you put a light there. And then you're going to worry, that you got to get FDOT involved, which we are going to get them involved anyway. But I just find it dangerous. I do think when we were on our walking tour with the TPA, right? They brought up a mid-block crosswalk by Loggerhead. I think that would be beneficial because the traffic light is so close to because it's so close to the intersection and you had a traffic light there. I think if you had the crosswalk with flashing signs, that could benefit Loggerhead as well. Marine Life Center. And what else? But yeah, I mean, I think to Dee Dee's point as well, if staff has enough information to move ahead to speak directly with FDOT and the county one-on-one, if that's something you all think is important to do first and then meet with the engineer or include the engineer, you guys let me know what you think there. Yeah.
Okay, Peggy, follow up?
Sure. Joe, you already met with the TPA. The quick question is the FDOT works directly with the TPA, correct? So they work in conjunction. So it's not like we have to get approval, I don't think, from FDOT, except for what we want to do in the end. And that's what the TPA does, is they kind of work with the FDOT and they bring these, what they've approved or the complete streets. And this is something that FDOT has approved in the past. And that's why TPA goes out and they go to all the communities and that's their job. I know, Joe, that you met with the TPA several times. So you've really kind of gone through that process, correct? Or do you feel it would be beneficial to meet with them again? And based on that, I think you need direction, because we keep going in this circle a little bit of, send it back to staff, because staff can't tell them anything unless council comes out with some direction. And to that point, hold on, I was going to say that with the direction, I think we need to eliminate some of these things like Universe. I think we're going to have time with Universe. I don't know if we need to set up an engineer or a workshop or anything like that for them at this point, because we're a little ways away from that. Is that correct?
Well, Universe is a unique animal because we're actually doing the design drawings right now. Remember, we want to be shovel ready for grant applications. So it might not be a bad idea to talk to a traffic engineer. Simmons and White is actually doing that project. They're actually designing the drainage system. So if there was direction from you all to say, we'd like a wider sidewalk or something of that nature, or bike lanes, it wouldn't be a bad idea to tell them now.
Okay.
Can I just add then, if we're going to give you that direction, to definitely have a workshop with the citizens?
Of course. I think
Discussed.
anything we do, we should have workshops with
100%.
the stakeholders and the residents. Anything. This is just the first step, but there
Correct.
should be many, many steps of getting the residents' input. Yes.
Right. So Dee Dee, I think that what would be nice to do with this meeting, and for Elaine and Jim and Jason, is to concentrate more on what do we want staff to do? What do we want them to go back with? Are we looking at, the workshop they can do? That's easy. They can engage that. We can tell them, give them that information, which we have. We can tell them to engage and get a better scope. I think we need to give you a better scope of what we'd like to do east of US1 on Donald Ross. I also think we need to give them a better scope of what we'd like to do on US1, from coming up with typicals or having Frank do a few and bringing it back at the next meeting and giving us an idea of the deceleration lanes, so we can see and be able to say, we don't want any of these deceleration lanes come out, or we can just go ahead and give that to the engineer and say, give us a typical without any deceleration lanes. And what does that mean to US1? And or give us an idea of what you feel, if we can do complete streets on all these sections or in the entire US1, and if not, what would benefit from that? Maybe it's just Donald Ross and US1 intersection. Maybe it's a couple of the intersections, but we probably need to get some direction to staff. So
That's where I was saying, I think we need to come up with a list, a priorities list.
Okay, can we do that now? We've still got 15 minutes.
I would put Universe Boulevard #1. I guess I would do, and I'm maybe starting at the easy ones first. Donald Ross east of US1 would also be a top priority. I guess I would maybe even rank that first because it's a small segment that's very meaningful. I don't know if that can be tied into the county's drainage project. I don't know, or we're not going that far with the drainage project. It's only going up to the waterfront building, I guess.
That's correct.
But yeah, that's an important segment. Universe Boulevard is an important segment. The intersection of Donald Ross and US1, the county has, the last communication I had with them before the new year about what their lane change idea was, I think they're looking to start designing in fiscal year 2023 regarding the lanes being restriped or added. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but even though we've met with the TPA or Joe has met with the TPA, I think it's the kind of thing where we need to stay current with the agency itself. I mean, we can get the agency and TPA work hand in hand, but they don't always agree on things. And I think it's still important to hear what the county, the county traffic department has to say, as well as the FDOT, regardless of what the TPA thinks. So I guess Universe and that Donald Ross segment are 1 and 2. US1 and the complete street project on that, I would look at that as number 3. But then we also have to say, are we going to look at US1 in anticipation of applying for a grant next year? Or are we still in the exploratory phase, I guess? So I guess I would do those 1, 2, and 3. As far as the improvements on Donald Ross, I get that I would make that last because the county seems to have plans that could mitigate what we would try to do. So I would put that last and really try to sync that up with the county's work.
Dee Dee, explain what you mean by the county has it in their plan. We know that they're looking at putting a deceleration lane coming south. Donald Ross.
They were doing something with the turning lanes where they're considering adding what do they call it? An eastbound to northbound additional. And then something that's going to go from, I guess, northbound to westbound, wrapping around the corner. Was the last thing I heard that was in their 5-year plan.
I could do a quick update. So the last email that we received from the TPA, which was an update, was to the county's 5-year county road program, which was approved on December 7th. On that one, they mentioned that the widening project of Donald Ross Road was deleted from the 5-year county road program, but that they separated it into 2 intersection projects. One being at Donald Ross Road and Elson Wilson to add a second northbound lane to westbound. So that's a left turn lane. The other ones being on Donald Ross Road and US1 to add a 3rd eastbound to northbound left turn and add a 2nd southbound to westbound right turn. And they just added more stuff that, they may need to acquire right away on the northwest quadrant of Donald Ross Road and US Highway 1.
Frank, how does that affect the development? I know I talked to you a little bit today about that. Who has priority here that does?
Well, anything that the development does, they're going to have to get FDOT approval either way. So there's going to be that communication from the developer to FDOT. It depends on what they mean by acquisition of the northwest quadrant.
It could be 5 feet, it could be 10 feet. You don't know what they're talking about right now.
Right, and you would need to see how much right of way there really is there. Joe and I were just discussing this earlier. It doesn't look like an 80-foot right of way. It might be more, but that's the discussion that
It's 80 foot there. It widens after the let's just call it the tree lot. After that, it becomes a
Christmas tree
very
lot.
big easement, but then it pinches down, as we explained, Len and I explained, it pinches down going towards US1. So I'm concerned that when they add that lane in there, that they are gonna affect that median. It's been a concern of mine, but we'll see how it goes on the design.
So Frank, was one of them going southbound, turning onto Donald Ross, going right, heading on Donald Ross? Is that one of them that they were looking at? One of the,
Right, yeah, so one, adding a third eastbound to northbound left turn lane. So, yes.
We could
eastbound
send that to you. We'll send you that because it's all.
so, but
technical.
how does that impact? So that's going to impact the development, but they have top priority to do
100%.
that, correct?
Yeah, they won't approve the
So
project.
that could affect what we're looking at doing also. So, because they're looking at putting in an extra lane in there.
Right, and, yeah, so they're requesting to add a second southbound lane to westbound. So that would be that corner that would impact the Juno Point project. Now, to mention this, 2023 is the design stage. 2025 is the right-of-way acquisition and mitigation. And the construction is not even within the next 5 years. So there's still long ways to go. You know, the road widening of Donald Ross Road was in this 5-year plan years ago. And as we see now, that's been deleted. So the same thing could happen as well.
Okay, so back to your point, Dee Dee, because we need to, I think, get going here.
Yeah.
I don't know if Universe Boulevard, the workshop is, you know, something that I'm sure staff can get started. So I look at that as something that can be done pretty easily. So then I go to the two streets and yeah, and prioritizing those, I think those are the areas that I'm looking at, and I'm not sure about everyone else. And perhaps having an engineer look at that, but what is the scope that we'd like them to look at? We know perhaps putting a bike lane in there, not touching the 2-lane road on the Donald Ross section east of US1. And then perhaps giving us 3 typicals. I'd like to get some opinion on this, or giving us just his opinion and coming in, or what's the most beneficial
But
for the town.
we- You're right, Peggy. We only have a couple of minutes. Let me suggest for consensus purposes, a couple of action items that we can maybe have some consensus on and leave the staff with for follow-up. The first, I think, would be, and to give the staff some latitude to figure out the best way to handle the follow-up. But I believe we as a council would like to see the Universe Boulevard workshop discussion of a widening of the sidewalks, possibly for a bike lane as well. The other action item would be for the staff to consider meeting with the county FDOT, TPA as needed, get whatever input might be productive, either before or after an engineer is engaged, depending on the staff's discretion in that respect. The third item would be that with respect to approaching the proposed traffic engineer for a more limited scope, whether it's 3 instead of 5, or other alternatives where we can try and streamline that proposed contract and possibly reduce the anticipated expense. And part and parcel of that, if the staff deems it productive, to get a competing bid from Kimberly Horn for similar services. And as a fourth item, Donald Ross east of US1 for safety, and as well as the intersection at Donald Ross and US1 for safety and connectivity issues. And for later discussion, we can take up US1 at a broader level, as well as Ellis and Wilson.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, Jim, I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure we had some time, but
Yeah.
if you've got follow-up comments, please.
Yeah, real quick. FDOT has US1, the county has Donald Ross Road. I think it's important that we meet with them, tell them what our vision is, and see if they're on board. If they're not on board, nothing happens. You have to have them on board. It's their roads.
We need to know what that vision is.
That's right. I know
The problem
that.
is the
Right,
vision.
yeah.
And that's the whole thing. What is the vision?
What is,
Right, and that's why, let's take it really simple. You look at East Donald Ross Road. Just looking at bike lanes versus sidewalks versus, you need a professional to advise us on that little path right there, to go to the county and say, this is our vision, and let a professional go to the county, professional to professional, and say, this is what we see should be there, and then they'll debate it. And it's the same on every scale. Meeting with the DOT and TPA, remember, I went to all those meetings. These were engineers. I was the only town manager in that meeting. These were engineers who had a plan. They knew what they wanted. They wanted to just submit an application. So you have to have a plan and know what you want. You have to have an orientation of where you are at now. And I don't know where we're at yet. So you still need it. We don't, remember, the February 18th is not a date now. So we're all at ease. So that was why we had that special meeting, because of that. So now we're all at ease. We just, whatever your priority, if it's US1, if you're a priority, or Universe, or whatever your priorities are, just let's take them step by step and get an engineer and start talking with an engineer and talking about the options, the pros and cons of all the aspects, all the variables.
Okay, with that suggestion, do we have consensus that Universe Boulevard and then Donald Ross east of US1 and the intersection at US1 and Donald Ross would be the priorities?
Well, they're already working on Universe Boulevard, right? So that's just something you want to engage him in an additional aspect of the sidewalks, increasing the sidewalks, or do you want to hold a workshop first? Because I think it would be beneficial to hold a workshop prior to.
I
Engaging
agree
an
that
engineer.
the workshop would seem to come first, but go ahead,
No,
Joe.
it's the engineer first. It's
Okay.
always the engineer first, because you can't talk intelligently at the workshop unless you have a professional. So you have to have an engineer to guide us through the whole thing. But to get that $25,000 contract, we just pay them hourly, and we just take it a piece by piece, roadway by roadway, and that would be my suggestion. My colleagues, you're saying yes.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I guess I disagree with that process. I would think that just to solicit resident input, we don't need an engineer for that. We don't have to present a plan or a rendering to the residents. I mean, it can just be a conversation, just get their thoughts. And then, because usually when they do charrettes, it helps, well, there's a rendering for that. But in our case, I think it's important to have residents' input that can help then further guide us on what to ask from the engineer.
And that's correct, but even on charrette, you still have to have the professionals there to answer the questions and the comments.
Yeah, okay, forget I said the charrette thing. That was a bad analogy, but I guess I would just.
Or a meeting, because if we're talking about expanding the sidewalk, as I mentioned before, we have utilities we gotta look at. We have lighting issues, drainage issues, all of that, the engineer is going to tell us, Frank,
All right.
expansion of the sidewalk is a no-go. You have to do a physical lane here.
And Didi, just more input. We're not going to ask him or her or whoever the engineer is to design anything. We're just going to show them the road and say, this is what we see. Let's have a workshop together with the residents and the stakeholders, so at least they can be present. It's not designing anything before we have a workshop. It's just to have a professional on board.
In the way I see this,
So-
it's kind of similar to what we did with Marsway. We had multiple workshops. One where we had the input from the residents, and then later when we actually came up with solutions for the traffic calming options, and then those options didn't work for them. We went back and forth until we had a solution that worked for all of us. That's how I would see it.
So do we, as council, want to come up with a budget for what of, these preliminary engineering tasks? I mean, is there an amount that we're comfortable spending or not spending? Is that an important thing to designate now?
I'm comfortable, personally, I'm comfortable leaving it to the I'm comfortable leaving it to the discretion of the staff, but if we want to put a cap like $10,000 on it, I'm fine with that, so that at least we could have an initial cap.
Joe or Frank, do you know when Universe Boulevard would be started if everything goes perfectly?
If everything goes perfectly, it's 2 years out.
Okay, so do we want to put
and a
Universe
half.
Boulevard first, or do we want to put, if we do the application for US1, it would be a year from February. Is that the number one priority if it's 2 years out still?
Yes,
Or
because
can we do both? Can we do them all at
drawings
the
are
same
being
time?
done right now.
True.
The
that's true.
designs are being done
Yeah.
right now as we speak. So we're going out for, remember, shovel ready means you got all your permits and everything. So
Right.
yes, I think we should engage an engineer if you want to do anything on Universe now.
And what about a survey? Well, I mean, what if we gave the residents there all a survey and just to see what their input is in advance? Or do you still feel that you need to know from an engineer what you can and can't do and how it would look?
Yeah,
From a con-
let's say they come up with some idea that is a no-go. Why
Yeah,
spend all that
okay, got it.
energy when an engineer says that's a no-go?
Okay, I want to just hit something else, Jim, just so that we can clarify something you said, because I don't know if we're stopping right at 5 o'clock. Yeah, you mentioned that it's taxpayers' dollars. So the only taxpayers' dollar that's being used on this is for the engineer, at least for the US1 Complete Streets. And I think that there's money there on Complete Streets for some of these other areas that perhaps we want to do. But, I think that we should be using the money, the grant money versus, I don't want to spend taxpayer dollar on this. So that would
Oh,
be a,
Grant money's taxpayer dollars. I mean.
well,
we're-
it's
I
not
I
direct.
understand
It's
what you're
not
saying,
direct,
but I mean,
right?
But there's still taxpayer dollars and.
Yeah, but it comes from the federal, it's
well, it
from the
comes from
state, I mean.
us. That goes to
Oh.
the federal, that goes to the state.
Right,
I
but
mean,
other people are going to use that money also.
I
I mean, they're
understand that.
using the
I
money that you
understand.
give now. So
Yeah,
I just
have
wanted to make
to
sure I
tell you
clarified
it's
that.
5 o'clock.
Okay, so with that, from an action item standpoint, it sounds like the staff suggestion is to allow them the latitude to engage the traffic engineer on an hourly basis. Are we on board with that and leaving it open-ended, or do we want to put a cap on it?
That's for Universe.
For initially for Universe Boulevard,
Can we
And-
also add Donald Ross east of US1 while we have him looking the two
I-
smaller segments of road?
It's not an issue at all. You don't even need a motion. You just need a consensus. Because he's already contracted.
so we don't necessarily need to dictate. All right,
Yeah, just a consensus would be appropriate at this point, just to, we could start on one, we meet every month. Let's see how Neptune, or whatever your priority is. Which one do you, not Neptune, I was on Neptune. today.
Universe.
Universe. Which one is your priority? And we'll engage him and then we'll see, educate him and educate ourselves. And then we'll talk about how we're going to engage the public and we'll have a plan, just like we had on Mars. I thought Mars we handled perfect.
I would say Universe would be the thing.
Or should we do the Donald Ross, the small segment first? That's,
You work on more than one at a
Or we could
time.
do both.
Yeah.
yeah, I would rank those two,
Oh.
and work on those two first.
I'm on board with moving forward with both.
Donald Ross east of US1, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
to enhance the pedestrian and bicyclist safety there.
Yes, thank you.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're adjourned.